if this show was just about the Six of Crows characters, I'm just going to call it the Ketterdam storyline, I would be fine with that. Hey, this is the Sword and the Pen Reflections, which is my casual alternative to the more formal channel, which is, you can see up there, the link. So I watched and read the first few chapters and the first episode of Shadow and Bone. My sister recommended it to me because she said it's not Twilight, which is what I thought it was. Nothing wrong with Twilight, just not usually my jam. And I'm finding that it's kind of an interesting comparison to make, the book and the TV show. So if you didn't know, Shadow and Bone was a book written by Leigh Bardugo back in 2012. I did not read it then, didn't really have much interest in it then. And then in 2021, she was involved in helping with writing the screenplay for the TV show. And she made, well, it's a Netflix streaming show. And she decided to use this opportunity to kind of make some changes, things that were not as good as they could have been in the book. She wanted to fix them for the show. And that was my sister's big selling point, was it's better than the book, which I hadn't read the book, so I was like, what do I care? But I think it's an interesting thing to study. So I did do this. I read the first 3 chapters. It's called Before and chapters 1 and 2. And then I watched episode 1. And I'm, as an editor, so I am a freelance editor, and I'm part of the process of improving a story or improving characters. And I get so involved in that process that sometimes it's hard on the rewrite to step back and look at the 2 versions and see just how big the impact of the changes is. And so this is a really interesting case study for me because I wasn't involved in the improvement process. So I can look at both pretty fresh and make the comparison and see the big differences. And first off, I'm really enjoying it. I did not think that I would enjoy it, but it's nice. I mean, it's definitely a young adult fantasy because it's got a young adult romance in the works, but it's not as strong as the book. So the book was very Twilight-y, and I have to admit, I have only seen the movies Twilight because I started reading one of the books and I just said, this is not for me. And my family has watched the Twilight movies, so I've seen them through them. But the book did feel like it had a lot of problems, and the show has absolutely improved almost all of them. So the first thing, now if you want a more in-depth discussion on hooks, which is something I'm going to talk about, go to my other channel and you will see that there is a video there about hooks and what those are and how I think that there should be multiples in a book and they should be put in the story right away. And I'm seeing that in the book, there were some in the prologue, but they weren't as effective or as long-lasting as the ones set up in the show. So in the book, it's kind of it's a flashback hook. So, a flashback prologue. You're seeing the main character from third person. You are seeing her from a distance, that is. Her life growing up in this kind of an orphanage. And you feel bad for her because she's an orphan. You see that she has a good friend, Mal, and you want them to stay together because they're both, they're 2 peas in a pod and the other kids bully them. And you learn that there are these people called Grisha, and they are magicians or wizards. It's not very clear what they can do. And if one of the kids tests positive as being Grisha, then they get to go live a life of privilege. So that's interesting, and you're kind of saying, all right, I don't want these kids to be separated, so that's the hook. The hook is you don't want them to be separated. Oh no, what's going to happen with this test? The end of the prologue is they're about to be tested. And a quick added note, I forgot to mention that prologue hook of will the kids be together is broken about 2.5 pages later when we find out that, yeah, they are still together. So it was kind of a pointless hook. I mean, it only made me turn the page, but then it died 2.5 pages later. Now, in the show, they decided to do something that I don't like this. I am in a totally different genre where I see this a lot. It is a narration with animation over the narration. But this was nice because it just got the main really important points out and did it really, really quickly. So you learn about the world. It's mainly a world building focused prologue. You learn that there is a country called Ravka, and hundreds of years ago, a dark, what did they call him? The Black Heretic, created the Shadowfold. It's basically a big wall cloud of shadow, and inside it are monsters. And it was created so that it splits the country in two. And now you have a landlocked side, which is surrounded by enemies, and then you have the side that has access to the coastline, and so it's doing very well because it has access to the ports, you know, so trade is happening over there, but not over here. And so that's explained very quickly, faster than I can do it like this even. Then you're told that there are Grisha, just like we heard in the book, but you're told what they can do. You're told that they are basically like water benders and fire benders. They can summon and control certain elements like wind, air, water, and actually also the human body, shadow. They are very powerful, so they can help people get through the Shadowfold. So if you're on the landlocked side, it's a good thing you want to have a Grisha with you to help you get across, because inside this big black cloud, there's tons of monsters that'll try to kill you and probably succeed unless you've got a Grisha. And then you learn that you also learn that the Grisha are not really looked at favorably by the people, because it was a Grisha, a Darkling or a Shadow Grisha, whatever, who created the Shadowfold. So people value them, but also don't like them. I like that. You also get that there's a prophecy that one day there will be a sun summoner, a Grisha who can summon and control light, and that he or she will be able to destroy the Shadowfold. So you get all of that in about 90 seconds, and that is just so much more interesting to me as someone who loves fantasy. So in the book, I wanted to know, what is it about this world that should excite me? And yeah, you get Grisha, okay, they're wizards. Well, we were expecting that there were going to be wizards or magicians or something. It's a fantasy, right? But we don't know what the heck they can do. And in this case, I would say it's, sometimes you want to leave information out so that your audience is going, ooh, I want to know more. There's got to be some more information there. But this was too little. There wasn't enough information there for me to really want to know anything else. I was just going, well, we expected there's wizards, big deal. So we learn about these kids. Okay, but in the show, I want to see these guys in action. I want to see them firebending and airbending and controlling people's bodies. That sounds really interesting to me. Also, you can see how what their position is in the wider world. And that's also interesting to me. Somebody who has power but is also despised, that seems like it could be a sympathetic character, or, which I was happy to say that I was pleasantly surprised by what the author did with the Grisha in this world, which is not to have them be, oh, poor us, we're looked down on. I mean, it was there, but mainly there was this facade of they're very proud and they think very highly of themselves. And it wasn't so much a facade. It was what everybody thought of them. And it's kind of the way that they behaved in front of other people, and they do sort of believe that they are better than everybody else. I like that. Also, you get to look forward to, there is a prophecy that there's going to be a sun summoner. Now, we all know that it's most likely going to be whoever the main character is. So when we jump into the next scene and we meet Alina, we're like, okay, it's going to be her. She's the sun summoner. I mean, it's in the trailer, so this is not a spoiler. But just a heads up, from this point forward, spoilers, okay? I mean, I spoiled a minute and 30 seconds for you so far, but now just be aware, spoilers. So yeah, two different types of prologues. And I just have to say that the show, even though it did something I don't normally like, it got so much information out so quickly and efficiently that I was more interested after that than I was with what they did in the book. So me personally, I'm taking away from this that, you know what? Don't be too mysterious and elusive in the beginning. You've got to get your audience's attention as quickly as possible. You don't want them to be, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 pages in going, where's the magic? You kind of want to show them that it's there right away. One of the things I really like about Harry Potter is that there is magic on pretty much every single page. Now, we'll talk later about the start, the Philosopher's Stone, which had some issues with a slow start. But once you get into Hogwarts and all that stuff, she describes magic on every single page. And I really, really like that because I feel so immersed in this unique world. And that's, I think, what you want to do if you have built a world like that. Really showcase some of the uniqueness of it. You want your audience to feel like they can escape to this place. And why would anybody want to escape into the next room? It looks just like this one. It's just over there. So tell us about something really, really interesting, really fascinating, fantastical. It's fantasy, right? Okay, so another thing that the show is doing better is, and I think it's pretty obvious, is characters. So in the book, you're inside Alina's head the whole time, and it is very, very obvious that this is a young adult romance fantasy because she's got 3 things on her mind. She's worried about going through the Shadowfold because she's in the military and she thinks they're like, oh, we're all taking out this troop, you're all going across the Shadowfold. So she's worried about that. Then she's worried but she's so unremarkable in appearance. She's not attractive, nobody notices her. She's actually, to some degree, unattractive, and that bothers her a lot. She thinks about it a lot. And the other thing she thinks about a lot is how much she adores Mal, her friend, and wants to be with him. And that's it. These are the 3 things that are on her mind for the whole of the first 2 chapters, because not the prologue, she's a little kid in that. And that got very old very quickly for me, just because I want a little bit more variety. I'm also a much older reader, and I think this is something that would definitely resonate with a younger audience. Probably, I don't know, young teens who want to read about somebody who's experiencing things that they're experiencing. And for me, that's just, I want a little bit more. I like good romance. I like there to be some longing in there, but I don't like it to be the central focus. And it just felt like it was the center of everything. I mean, even her looks, she was afraid about not being attractive enough for Mal because he grew up to be gorgeous and he loves all the beautiful women and all the beautiful women love him. And yeah, well, we also don't like very much that Mal in the book, this is her friend, doesn't seem to notice that she's in love with him and doesn't seem to care that his friends just sort of disregard her. I mean, they're right in front of her and they practically ignore her. At one point, somebody calls her, I think, Styx. And that's not very nice, but they just sort of leave her. Like, she's just a loner. And yeah, it's just not a very nice thing. And we don't like Mal particularly. He does come back to try to comfort her at some point, but it's also like he's coming to comfort her, but also to like, yeah, this Grisha is really beautiful and I really like her and, maybe something will happen. Not the greatest, like, we're kind of going, why are you wanting to be with this guy? He's not great. So yeah. In the show, much, much better job here. So in the show, they made Alina, you're not in her head, obviously, you can't be, although we do get a narration from her in the very beginning. But anyway, you can see that there is possibly some romance between her and Mal, but it's not obvious that it's there. So you wouldn't really be losing much of your young adult into romance kind of audience. So you're saying, okay, it's potentially there, but there's other things. And here's the best thing that they did. So instead of her being concerned with not being attractive, which the actress is gorgeous, so it would be ridiculous if she thought she was unattractive, they decided to make her half Han Shu-Han. Now, the Shu-Han are a people to the south that the main country that she's from, Ravka, they're enemies. They are not on friendly terms. So she looks like the enemy. And that sets up potential for so much more conflict coming up. Because we kind of suspect, well, we're pretty sure she's the Sun Summoner, even at this point. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, so if she is the Sun Summoner, which people call the Saint, I think, this means that people are going to see her as a religious figure, a leader, a savior, right? Well, maybe people won't be so willing to accept her as the sun summoner if she looks like the enemy. Or maybe they'll think that she's a spy, like maybe the Ravka government will think that Shu Han planted her, like is somehow faking that she's the sun summoner or something, so that they can get a political shoe in Ravka. Or the other alternative was maybe people will like her. Maybe the people will see the Shu Han people a little differently because their savior looks like a Shu Han person. And although you think, oh, that's great, that'll mean there'll eventually be peace between these two countries, there might be political leaders who see the people looking at the Shu Han no longer as an enemy as not being advantageous to them anymore. Maybe they are acquiring power through the idea that everybody hates Shu Han, like it's good that they're enemies. So you're seeing a lot of potential for some really good storytelling coming up in the future just from that. Right now she's getting racist remarks and stuff, and let's see, like the lunch man decides not to serve her and says, back of the line. So that's like, these are minor in comparison to the weight of a global scale conflict, where you've got countries that are maybe Shu Han decides to claim, oh, she's part our saint because she's half Shu Han. It's much weightier consequences her being half Shu Han as opposed to her just being unattractive. Anyway, so there is one other thing in the show. Right away, she's not concerned about crossing the shadow fold. So yeah, there's a little less tension there, but it only lasts for about, I think, 10 minutes. And then you find out Mal is randomly selected to go on the skiff across the shadow fold, which I liked the skiff. I liked that the military is testing a new ship, because if it's faster at getting across the shadow fold, that means that they spend less time in the shadow fold. They risk death less by spending less time in the shadow fold. So I like that that's happening, because in the book, they're just sending a bunch of ships with a bunch of people as if it's not really, oh, we'll just send everybody. I like that they're like, no, we got to find a safer way across. It makes it seem more dangerous. Okay, so she's not afraid until Mal is suddenly, he's going. And this is where her character becomes so much better, because she becomes proactive. So in the book, she's just with everybody when they get on the boats and go across. But in the show, she decides, I want to go with Mal. He's going across the shadow fold, and I would rather go with him and die with him in the shadow fold than stay here and he goes off and he dies and we're separated. So what she does is, she's a cartographer and all her buddies are cartographers, and Mal is a tracker and all his buddies are trackers. What she does is she burns the maps of the other side of the shadow fold. And she does this thinking, okay, then what they're going to do is they're going to send a cartographer over there, and I'm going to volunteer to go. So everything seems to be going to plan, and she volunteers to go, and they say, yeah, you're going, but not just you. Your whole team of cartographers and friends are going with you. This is great because it turns what happens into the shadow fold into her fault. And, she had no part in choosing who goes across or being responsible for who goes across in the book. But in the show, it's because of her that all her cartographer friends are going as well. And we know, and like I said, there'll be spoilers. This is the first one. Well, I guess they go into the shadow fold and a bunch of people die, including her friends, and a bunch of people get very seriously injured, including her friends. And they only died and got hurt because of her, because she didn't think things through, and now they had to go. And something she did caused them to have to go. So it's setting up, once again, the potential for more conflict in the future. And this isn't an internal conflict. We hope that she'll have a lot of guilt in the future about this particular decision. So I like that as well. I don't know if I mentioned this, but Mal in the show is so much better too. And he's better because he doesn't have to be better. First of all, he doesn't seem to be like super gorgeous. I mean, he's a attractive looking actor, but nobody recognizes him as being super handsome, and he's not lusting after the ladies and the ladies are lusting after him. At least we didn't see that like we saw in the book. It was everywhere in the book, but not here. his friends didn't treat Alina badly. They treated her very nicely. They seemed like a good bunch of buddies, all these guys. So that actually makes him look better. It makes it look like if his friends are cool and he's cool with them and they're treating Alina right and he's treating Alina right, that's so much better than his friends are treating Alina rudely and he's just letting it happen. You're a much more noble person in the show. So Mal is better in the show as well, including the scene where he does flirt with another Grisha. So after Alina is not served in the mess hall because the lunch guy is racist, Mal goes to steal a bowl of fruit and bring it to her. And he steals it from a Grisha tent and gets caught. And this beautiful Grisha girl flirts with him and he's kind of into it. And she says, hey, why don't you come with me back into my room? And he seems very intrigued and tempted, but he doesn't give in because he's bringing this bowl of fruit to Alina. This is very likable. He resisted temptation in order to fulfill his role as a supportive friend to Alina. And even though he did seem to enjoy the flirting, I kind of liked it because I liked him enough that I wanted him to be happy. I'm like, all right, I want you to have a nice time, you know? I mean, you haven't made any promises to Alina. Yeah, I kind of want them to be together, but I want him to be happy. And the fact that he doesn't go for it really does, like, all right, he's leveled up there. So good job on making your love interest more likable. Now, I do have to comment on what they did in the Shadowfold because the book and the show handled it differently. And in this case, the book did better. I wish that the show did what the book did without any of the other stuff that the book did. I wish that the show was all the same except for this part. So in the book, they go into the Shadowfold and it's black and creepy. You can hear the Volcra, that's the monsters flying overhead, and Alina feels Alexei grab her arm, and then suddenly you hear the wing flapping get closer from one of the monsters. It grabs Alexei and rips him up into the air. He flies away and you hear him screaming and it just disappears off into the darkness. Very creepy. And then everything that happens in the show after that, or in the book after that, is the same as in the show. In the show, I don't know why they did this, but now I do know why they had a blue lamp. You can't have on a TV show or a movie complete and total blackness. We have to be able to see something, and I thought this was a good substitute. A woman, Grisha, who can control fire at the very beginning says, this blue lamp is our only light. It's okay. The monsters, they don't get attracted to this light. However, if you were to light a normal flame, it would attract the monsters. So that's what she warns them about. Then as they're crossing the fold, for plot reasons, the blue lamp goes out. And some idiot on the boat decides, oh no, I better light this lighter and then light this lamp. And what do you know? The monsters see the light and come and kill him and kill a bunch of other people. And yeah, don't make your bad guys powerful because your good guys are stupid. It doesn't actually make them look more powerful. All it does is make it look like the good guys are stupid. How much better would it have been if no matter how quiet and careful they were, the monsters still found them? That would reinforce the idea that the Shadowfold is super dangerous. But the show didn't do that. The show did not make it seem like the monsters were all that dangerous. It kind of seemed like, well, if they just didn't light that lamp, they could have made it through perfectly fine. So yeah, no good on that. Another thing that the show should have done is they should have done with Alexei what they did in the book. So remember, Alexei is the one holding onto her arm. He's a friend, and he gets ripped up into the sky and killed. In the show, Alexei, who has up until now been very likable because he's been friendly and supportive, and we can see that he has a crush on Alina, he sees that things are not going well. He sees people dying everywhere, freaks out, and abandons ship and runs off. You didn't need to do this. Now, he needs to survive this whole encounter. How much better would it have been if everything like the book happened? He gets pulled up away from Alina which definitely should have like rocked her guilt, because remember, he's only there because of her stupidity, right? Wouldn't it have been better if he got ripped up into the sky and then he's being carried off and they just assume he's dead, and then when Alina glows and all of the Volcra around her fall down dead or whatever, he's being carried off, but the Volcra that's holding him is dazzled by the light or is hurt by it and crash lands, and he survives the crash landing, and that is how he gets through. You could have done that. That would have been so much better. I wish that the show did that. Because making Alexei abandon ship is kind of cowardly, and it actually undoes something that they do with him later in the episode. So I'm just going to jump ahead. You find out that Alexei, he has survived the fall, he has made it across the Shadowfold, and apparently after being interrogated, he wouldn't talk. He wouldn't tell the enemy or anybody what happened inside the Shadowfold. He was a coward. If he was a coward in the show, to get, he was looking around seeing everybody hurt and he runs off, why would he break under the pressure of people questioning him or torturing him? He's self-preserving. When he's afraid for his life, he abandons ship. He abandons the mission. He would just talk, but he doesn't. It takes a Grisha, a heart render, who can make him feel okay and everything's good and tell the truth. So that didn't work. That was, anyway, what they should have done is have him be carried off against his will. And you still could have had him, everything else could have happened exactly the way it happens. Anyway, not going to go any further into that. I do have just one little bit more, and that is about the secondary storyline. Now, I don't have a book to compare it to. I know that the characters are based off of Six of Crows, but the story is original from what I have been told. So I have nothing story-wise to compare it to. So I'm just going to gush about it. I loved it. I absolutely understand why the writers felt like we have to include these characters because they are so well liked. It was a good decision. Very good decision. Honestly, if this show was just about the Six of Crows characters, I'm just going to call it the Ketterdam storyline, I would be fine with that. Not that I don't care about what's going on with Alina. That's interesting too, but it's sort of formulaic. She's the one, and now she's going to have to train to learn how to use her power. We kind of see where it's going. With this group, I don't really see where it's going. The whole episode, I was kind of guessing, like, how are they gonna tie this in with the main plot? Because I don't like it when you have separate plots and it's not obvious that they're going to at some point cross. And they do. Right at the very end, they tell you they're gonna go and kidnap Alina. So very nice job of putting the two stories together. Well done there. The highlight of the Ketterdam stuff is absolutely the characters. The characters are fantastic, and they hook you with these characters right away, every single one of them. So, Jesper. I usually find this sort of character obnoxious. I don't like it when they're cocky and competent and they're like, I look good, and he was giving off these vibes. I just don't enjoy seeing it. And I've realized because of this show that there are reasons why I find it obnoxious. So if you came here from The Right Advice, the channel where my friend Randy and I were reviewing Willow, I did not enjoy that the characters in the show Willow, not the movie's great, the show Willow, they all kind of had the same personality. They all talked the same. They all had the same sense of humor. I found that bland because they're all the same. I was expecting, because maybe this is a young adult fantasy, sort of like how Willow was, I was expecting that all these characters in Ketterdam, the Ketterdam storyline, were going to be just like this first character, Jesper. But they weren't. They're all very different. So that's a plus. But now, the second thing that made Jesper really interesting to me was that he has deference to the guy with the cane. And this all comes out very quickly, like in the first 15 to 20 seconds that you meet this character, you find out that he has a high level of respect for the guy with the cane. Almost like he's ashamed to have been caught doing something childish. You see that there's something interesting going on there. So I want to see, what is it that has this very self-assured and cocky guy feeling like he should respect this other person? who has a disability, obviously. And that's not me saying, oh, I'm interested in the other person. I'm interested in Jesper himself. So that is very good. Now moving on to Inej. Inej, I usually find, well, kind of boring. And the reason is because you see the dark, mysterious, with a tragic past and hardened to the world, you know, doesn't give away her emotions, cat burglar type lady quite often in fantasy and science fiction. And I feel like it's predictable. So I need more to this character. And again, very, very quickly, you find out more. She asks Kaz, she tells him, I'm bringing you some information from the other girls at the menagerie. There are some of them who tell me stuff because they hope that you'll buy them out of, like, slavery, basically. They work in a brothel and they're slaves there, or indentured servants. And that's interesting to me. So she's a very compassionate person, and you can see that there's vulnerability there. Like, she really hopes that Kaz will do this. And I like that. I like seeing that there. You also see that she seems a bit flattered when Kaz calls her unique in all the world. Like, he wouldn't buy any girl. He only bought her. So I like that. You're seeing a bit more vulnerability in this character, this dark, mysterious lady that you don't usually see in this character type very often. And now on to Kaz, who is my favorite of the Ketterdam people. He, again, a character I usually find very bland and boring. And again, because I usually find each one of these characters on their own, I wouldn't enjoy. But on their own, I am totally enjoying them. And in this show, I'm enjoying them because they're very different from each other. So he is very stern and sharp and seems to have no sense of humor. And when a guy is going to says, hey, I heard about this painting that got stolen and I've got a buyer if you've heard anything. And he's like, yeah, nothing. I don't have anything for you. And as soon as we get into his apartment, you see the painting is there. So you're going, okay, so he clearly has some skill as a thief and is good at playing dumb. And he wasn't interested in the money. It's just hanging in his apartment. So why did he steal it? That's interesting. A thief who steals but not for money. I want to know more about this character. And then you want to know even more again when he talks to Inej, because she tells him, you know, hey, can you help the other girls in the menagerie? And he goes, I didn't buy your freedom. I'm paying your indenture, and I wouldn't invest in anything that wasn't unique in all the world. And you are unique. The other girls in there aren't. And you're kind of going like, yeah, that's not very nice, but also that's very interesting. So, and I'm not usually drawn to a morally gray character like that, but you see that you feel like there's something really good in there, and that's what you want to see more of. So I'm really interested in their whole story as well. Like, I loved it. There was a little bit of a convenience there though. So when they needed a break, they needed some leg up because they weren't able to find a safe way across the Shadowfold, and that's what they had to figure out. We got to find a safe way across the Shadowfold so that this other merchant guy will hire us for some $1 million or million Kruger job that he's got. And then they randomly come across some information that, well, I guess it wasn't random. It was brought to him by somebody in his network that, hey, they need a Heartrender. And so Kaz quickly, like, we know who a Heartrender is. We're going to go get her before anybody else does. And that will give us a shoe-in. And they just have, so they get it. And it's not that hard for them to get that job first. So it was a little bit convenient, but it was played out with no fluff. It was quick and to the point. There wasn't a lot of time wasted. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the pacing. I liked that you had a character that was smart. They didn't, you know, do something stupid and that's why things were terrible. They did something smart and that's why things went well for them. So that's much more likable as a character than anything else. And as I said, if this show was only about the Ketterdam story, I'd be very, very pleased and I'd be totally satisfied. I am interested in seeing how the two meet. And also, oh, I like this. I like that now a character I like, so Kaz and the crew, is going to, at some point, probably butt heads with Alina because she's the Sun Summoner. Now, he's been hired to go or we think he's going to be hired, to go and kidnap Alina. That's interesting. It puts them at odds with each other. So it's a very good setup in this show. And this whole storyline was not there in the book, and I think it was a wonderful addition to the show. I'm actually very excited to see more. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this a lot. I enjoyed the show more than the book, but I liked it. Yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. I really liked it. But tell me what you thought. Did you like it too? Do you want to just gush over the Ketterdam storyline as I do? Go ahead and comment. I am in this is the beginning of this channel. We are in our infancy, so I'll definitely respond, and I'd love to hear from you and just talk more about all of this. Otherwise, please like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. If you're feeling really generous and you can afford it, maybe check out my Patreon and Ko-fi. And yeah, until episode 2, I'll catch you next time.